All right. Welcome back to the Bryce Report, everybody. Today's conversation is going to be awesome. We have the one and only Anne VanderSteel on here. Anne, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you being here. Hopefully, this video will not be taken down from YouTube in 23 minutes like the last one we did.
Sorry. You'll probably
No.
get banned for saying my name on YouTube. It's the way it's the story of my life with that company.
I'm feeling that pain now these days too. I mean, now I have a parental advice that goes up under all of my YouTube videos. By the way, I want to remind all the audience, I have still yet to date used a curse word, so I don't know what kind of content children couldn't watch. I actually keep that in mind at the top of mind. I want young people to watch these videos, and I want them to see you can convey information without using foul language. I'll use it in my own life in private, but I don't think that see any point to using it here in public. So. And we're going to do something fun today. We're going to do something I think needs to be done.
Okay.
I think we need to look at the Trump administration like any other administration. We've got 200 days in office. We've got some good things going on. We've got some bad things going on. We've got some confusing things going on. We're just going to do a scorecard today.
Okay.
Let's just go through. And you are so on the pulse of this stuff. I have the pulse of, I guess, of the financial markets and some technology coming out. But you are really on this stuff. If you guys aren't following Anne on X, you absolutely need to. On Rumble, her show is great. You may not agree with what she's saying. That's actually the point of reporting. I want to remind the world that the way the news should work is here is something that happened. Here is what these people think about it. Here's what these people think about it. What do you think about it? That skill of critical thinking, listening to sides you don't want to hear, actually leads you to the truth faster than listening to your own echo chamber. So. We'll keep that in mind today. So let's go through it. We've got 100 days in office. I can start out with some of the things that are awesome that have happened so far.
Okay.
I love the fact that we are using External Revenue Service. I think that is a much needed thing in this country. It will offset a lot of things. It's not Austrian economics, by the way. I had the head of the Mises Institute on here. He hates the idea of tariffs because he hates the idea of any government interference. But I think tariffs have been a big win. Would you agree?
I'd say they have been a big win. Part of the problem with tariffs, and it's funny you bring this up because I was having this conversation with my husband this morning, Eric, is that tariffs while they are tariffing the actual cost of goods sold from the company, from the country in which it's coming. So it's not the retail price, it's the actual, wholesale price, cost of goods sold. That is nominal, but it still has to be absorbed somewhere. And I don't know about you, but I'm still seeing inflationary costs in supermarkets around the world, around the country. And I've just done a big loop from Florida out to Colorado, to Illinois, to DC, to New York, to Boston and back. And so I was buying groceries and food everywhere. And I'm not seeing a massive reduction. The cost of eggs has come down some, but that's also supply side economics as well, right? Last I heard, they haven't torched as many egg factories and as many chicken factories chicken coops as they were in the last 24, 36 months. So, there's that. But I'd say overall, they brought a ton of revenue in. What are they at? 400 billion, 500 billion right now? Is that what the total number is?
I think the total received right now is about 180. But they have booked, for next month, they should get to 400 billion.
Okay, that's where I read that number. Yeah. So I know, that's a significant number. It's barely $500 billion, right? And they just spent, 5 of it or are planning on it in the big, beautiful bill. So they're going to, hopefully we're going to see that get cost neutralized. That would be awesome. But yes, I'd say overall, that's a win in the sense that really our country was founded on that. That's how we were, as wealthy as we were in the late 1800s. But let's face it, government of the 1800s to government of 2025 are two totally different governments. They're not even close to being the same. They don't even resemble one another. We've got a monolithic bureaucracy that takes trillions of dollars to fund every year. So we got to figure out a way to do that, or just get rid of most of it, which is what I, constantly beat the drum for.
Yeah, our 1800s government was the equivalent of like a Geo Metro, if anyone remembers that tiny little car. I had to drive one of those in college. Today we're dealing with a Suburban, right? Or even a bus at this point. It's just so large. But it's interesting. There's an image going around X right now of someone who took a picture of a 4.5 pound packet of beef loin, New York steak, boneless USDA choice at Kirkland brand at Costco. April 2nd, 2024, it cost $49.24. Yesterday, August 11th, 2025, it was $78.03. So they came out and said today that inflation is at 2.7%. Real inflation, if you add in some of these other numbers that are involved, doesn't include steak or beef. It includes ground beef, not steak. So
Right.
anything labeled steak is not included in CPI. You get varying ideas, but I personally think CPI is probably somewhere around 8.5 to 9%. And gas prices show that they haven't changed in this administration yet. I think that will change in the end, but gas is still around the same price, also not included in the CPI.
Right.
Another thing is unemployment. Unemployment, they say, is 4.4%. I think it's much higher than that, considering that anyone who hasn't looked for a job in a year is no longer counted in that percentage, and anyone
Yep.
driving an Uber is considered a full-time employee. I think we're probably around 7 or 8%.
Right. Right. I would agree with you because again, they don't ever factor in the cost of energy.
Yeah.
When they start looking at this, food and energy and besides medicine, are arguably the most expensive things that you could put into the CPI. And under the Biden regime, they were constantly lying about all of it,
Yeah.
constantly lying. So we're still dealing and reeling from this disinfo, misinfo. And I do think there's still snakes in the woodpile inside the various agencies that provide this data over at Bureau of Labor Statistics, et cetera, that are probably trying to, muddy the waters. I would hope that, Howard Lutnick and Besant and his team around him that are really trying to wrangle this in are able to figure out who's who in the zoo over there to make sure they're getting the best numbers. But again, part of being the president of a corporation, America, is really, selling this to the American people because if we're going to get healthy, they want Americans, thinking positively down the road. So I understand that there's a little psychological operation going on as well. He is the cheerleader in chief. Trump has called himself that publicly in Trump first administration. So I don't see an issue with trying to, get everybody excited about what we're doing and moving forward, but we have to bring some reality to the situation. And again, as I always say, Americans are part and parcel of the problem here. We have a civic duty to help. And so we've got to be doing what we can do to help restore this machinery. And that comes from the ground level, from the local communities. That's not just the federal government. If we look at every solution top down, we can perpetually be in this situation that we find ourselves, which is battling tyranny at the hands of a government that is literally unconstitutionally delegating powers to these bureaucracies, these agencies, which have no business in our lives. And that in of itself is a layer of tax that is choking this country, and it is strangling innovation, and it's strangling competition. So, I think we have to address all of these issues. And I think we need to do that more expediently, frankly. He's the executor and chief operating officer of this company, that he should be able to start eliminating this agency overhead, which would reduce the amount of burden on Americans, not only in the tax level, but on the regulatory side significantly, which would unleash the ingenuity of the American people into this country with manufacturing. And you watch how much more flooded we get in with foreign money coming in to invest and build factories here. I think it would be extraordinary.
It's dangerous too. I think
Yeah.
we get a lot of excitement about foreign capital pouring in, CCP capital pouring in, Chinese money pouring in. This has been happening for 2.5 decades, and it hasn't
Right.
turned out well, right? You can look at the big auto plant in Michigan. There's all kinds of scenarios where they're hiring only other Chinese immigrants coming in.
Right.
If these foreign investments go into a place where Americans actually have jobs, it's a good thing, but we don't know yet. So I don't want to. I hate people who hear something. There's a theoretical option that could occur in the future, and they flip out because of it. You have to give time for things to develop. You really have to give time. And I think it's important. But here's something interesting. I'll stay on financials right now. We're going to keep moving through this scorecard. I looked at a comparison of Q2 2008 and Q2 2025. Everyone knows what happened Q3 of 2008. Wasn't good.
Mm-hmm. No.
So housing inventory today is 2.6. Back then it was 5 million. That's a real number. I think that's an absolutely real number. I don't think many houses are on the market because what are you going to do? Sell a 2% mortgage to get a 7% mortgage?
Right.
But nonetheless, that's an accurate number. GDP growth last quarter was 3%, which almost all of it is from front-running tariffs. So, and every economist admits that. So let's say it's half. Let's say the actual GDP is half. That would put us around 1.5. 2008, it was 1.1. Unemployment today is 4.2. I was wrong. Not 4.4. 4 points is lower than I thought. 4.2, but it was 5.3 in 2008. I think we're way over 5.3% unemployment rate personally. Because I have eyes and ears. No other stat but that. Inflation, they're telling us 2.7, unchanged. It was 4.9 in 2008. Fed funds rate, 4.4 today, 2% back then. Mortgage rate, 6.8 now, 6.3 then. S&P didn't change that quarter. This past quarter, there was unchanged as a break even. It was down 2.7%. So one part of the world is looking at these numbers and saying we're nowhere near 2008, and the other part of the country is looking at these numbers with a questioning eye and saying we're worse than 2008. And I tend to agree with the latter, because if you have GDP growth around 1% instead of 3, unemployment above 5.3, we have worse rates, worse mortgage environment, we're in a slower housing environment. I think we're kind of in a similar position.
Yeah.
But I'm not here to make that economic prediction here today. But I think it's important to have. You touched on something, the BLS, which I'm calling the big lie syndicate these days, because they haven't told the truth in about 4 years about where we are. They come out with a big number and readjust it later. They just came out with a small number and they're going to adjust it smaller because we simply aren't seeing that type of job growth. Ghost jobs are actually tripled in the past 3 quarters. Oof. That is where jobs are being posted. Hey, we're hiring, but they're actually not. So they're giving this public appearance of growth. And this happens a lot with capital raises and things like that. So external revenue service, we agree, big win. I think that's a big win, but it has to go hand in hand with getting rid of the internal revenue service. Otherwise, it does the American people no good.
Right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying it's interesting that Besant is now running the IRS. The head of the IRS stepped down. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a good start that we are, again, we'll get into this topic later, but a lot of the reduction in government, I think, will be replaced with AI. I think that we're replacing human beings with AI and government systems. So again, a nebulous term to look at, right?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, Palantir is taking over all the agency government, and they've been, Palantir got deployed under Biden, and President Trump is just making it bigger to try and streamline. But, one of the things, going back to what Scott Bessent is doing, which is interesting, and with Brian Long stepping down, which, I'm no good riddance, goodbye. If you recall, perhaps you saw Gary Franchi's question to Secretary Bessent several weeks ago, where he asked him about Joe Bannister, and he asked about the IRS. Joe Bannister was a former agent along with Sherry Peel Jackson. They were both indicted as former agents for tax fraud, essentially, which is hysterical because there's plenty of foreign agents former agents of the IRS who have come forward, and I've interviewed several of them, that says there is no law that says you have to pay federal income tax on income you've earned. And it's, Title 26, the IRS code under US code, was never codified into positive law. It's really a straightforward statement here that there is no law that says you have to pay income tax. And Secretary Bessent said, I'm really glad that you brought this up, because of course people were trying to sweep Secretary Bessent away from this question. Yep. And he said, no, this is important. I want to answer this question. He proceeded to tell the public that he's brought in Joe Bannister into the IRS as somebody to help fix and streamline the IRS. Well, we all know what Joe Bannister thinks of the IRS. Bye. It's bye-bye. So while, the American people have suffered unconscionably so and did not realize they could opt out of that system, and that frankly, they were opting into it by the paperwork that was being put in front of them to, legal trickery, essentially, to get them to pay these taxes. Pretty soon, I think they're going to get rid of it. That in of itself is going to be such a boost to the economy for people. They will start to spend more money, and they will have, obviously, 30, 40, 50% more money in their take home, depending on the tax paradigm they're in. So this is, like you said, the external revenue service is massively huge. It's what's happening on the other side that is yet to happen, that, President Trump trepidatiously tiptoed it with no tax on tips and Social Security. Okay, bravo, that's a good start, but we need to go all the way. And I think that is going to be quite interesting. There was something else you said with respect to, what was it you were talking about prior to CPI?
The big lie syndicate?
Yeah. What was it you were talking about prior to? You said something that sparked something in my head that I wanted to bring up because it was significant to this whole thing. With respect, I can't remember. We'll come back to it. I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. I mean, our CPI is a complete lie. I mean, there's no American in the world or in this country right now who's sitting here going, "Oh man, yeah, 2%. I totally feel it." Everyone's feeling 9, 10%. I mean, it's obnoxious to see some of the struggles that people who make $120,000 a year, which used to be a lot of money.
That's what I was going to say. It was the amount of inflation in housing, food, and cost of living. Everything has gone up, but it's not proportional to the amount of, it's not commensurate with your salary. So, $120,000 a year 10 years ago was a lot of money. Today, it's barely getting by for a family of 4.
Especially if you live in New York or Los Angeles. I mean, you're in poverty at $120,000 a year.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's get into some of the other wins, because I think the IRS topic is the most exciting thing in the world, because I think if you want to see American greatness, take the shackles off the slaves.
Right.
You want to see innovation. You want to see creativity. You want to see people living a free life, producing amazing things for the world. Take the shackles off. We are cattle on a tax farm. That's it. That's all we are. And if you remove those shackles, I think you're going to see decentralized, open sourced AI become a benefit to society. Whereas right now, we're not really in that space, and we have a tyrannical leader. We had Trump put basically Larry Ellison and Sam Altman in charge of Project Stargate for AI. Larry
Yeah.
Ellison's been on camera for a decade now talking about basically building RoboCop. And if you're too young to remember RoboCop, it is a dystopian nightmare in Detroit, Michigan, where robots become the police who have no soul, and lawlessness abounds. Watch RoboCop. That's exactly what Larry Ellison is predicting. What are your thoughts on the AI invasion right now?
Horrific. My good friend John Sable beats the drum on this every single day. The Patriot Voice out on X. He is absolutely calling out the AI invasion of it's literally a Fourth Amendment violation, nonstop. Look, we're already submitting, we are submissive to technology like Alexa in your home. If you have one, you already know you're being spied on. Every time I talk about something that, oh, honey, I want to look at shop for X, Y, and Z. Well, sure enough, 2 seconds later, up on my phone pops X, Y, and Z as an ad. I mean, we're constantly being monitored by AI, not somebody real time listening to it, but there's somebody always listening. And that stuff is all, it's all stored in servers, which is one of the reasons why the energy business is so incredibly important right now. You know this all too well. They're building these server farms like crazy. And AI is, we're in the race against China right now for AI. So we need all of this information, so we think. And that will be weaponized and used because, again, these agencies have been proven over and over again. And these corporations that are monitored and regulated by these agencies have been proven over and over again to be another instrumentality of government. So whether it's Google or Apple or Sam Altman or Oracle or whatever, Palantir, they're instrumentalities of the federal government, which means the federal government has a right to now spy on you because you're submitting through terms of service to allow these entities to spy on you. And you don't even know what they're taking away. So I don't agree with how this is being deployed. I do believe we need to have an Internet Bill of Rights that is going to be very comprehensive, including artificial intelligence. And I do believe we need protection from this. Jason Fick, my good friend, who has gone to the Supreme Court 3 times with respect to the censorship story on Section 230 suing Facebook, is looking at a solution on how to get around the Supreme Court because our judiciary is completely corrupt. They're all bought in. They're invested in big tech through their mutual funds. And if we were to ever upend big tech by ending censorship, a lot of the stuff in the mutual fund territory, that whole industry would have a big dip in their stock prices for a while the dust settles to figure out, shoot, how is government going to control, the little people again? But I digress. What I'm saying is if we can work around through executive action, instead of trying to go through the courts, which we know to be corrupt, using executive action and get the president to understand just how invasive all this is. Because I really, truly don't want to believe he's in on the whole big tech, thought police, minority report sort of governing style. I want to believe that he truly appreciates our Bill of Rights and that God created us to be free. And I believe that if he's fully educated on how far reaching this technology is and what it can do, a la Larry Ellison or Sam Altman talking about RoboCops. I watched Larry Ellison talk about that the other day. Terrifying.
Yeah.
These dogs that are running around. I saw one recently outside Manhattan, a dog cop, robo dog cop. So if we have this, if we allow this, we become a victim to whoever is putting in the inputs into the AI and making those decisions. And we know that certain AIs lean right, certain AIs lean left. I've yet to run into one that just goes squarely down the middle and is just giving you the facts. And so we are going to be subject to what could contentiously be heinous crimes against we the people, where we're just shot and killed, indiscriminately because the RoboCop dog, police, whatever it is, decides that they looked at your internet profile. Well, you're a dissident and we can't have that. So we're going to take you out. And unfortunately, it becomes, not a human decision anymore. It becomes out of a machine. And there is no feelings with that stuff. So I do believe that we've got to really figure out how to rein that in. But it's being fast tracked through agencies and instrumentalities, a la the corporations, through our federal government, which should not be controlling what's happening in the states. And that goes right back to the big, beautiful bill that you talked about earlier. This is an artificial, takeover of our 10th Amendment state sovereignty. And we're being told to sit down and shut up. And I don't like it.
And that's kind of the beat goes on, right? I mean, there's
Hmm.
certain things. I mean, Washington D.C. is a monster. It's a beast,
Yep.
and it is the beast. So I give things time, and I don't want to point the finger at Trump, although I will because he's the president and he took the role. I think in this AI model that we're looking at right now, there's a show I used to love with Jim Caviezel called Person of Interest, and
Oh,
that kind
yeah.
of shows how you could use this technology in a good way to stop bad people. The border doesn't seem to be any different. It was wide open. Now it's closed. By the way, the border was closed before the big, beautiful bill was passed. It was already closed. So
Right.
we had, 24 encounters as opposed to 250,000. And then we just put $150 billion to work, basically with Palantir. And for those who are watching this, it's important to understand how they get you to enslave yourself. Palantir is the prime example. Palantir is the number one performing stock in the market. People are making a fortune with Palantir. They're talking about Palantir all the time. They have no idea what Palantir is. Palantir is a CIA cutout that was
Correct.
financed by InQtel,
Thank
which
you,
is the
Tom.
CIA's venture capital arm. You are literally making the same operatives who spy on you wealthier by the minute.
That's right.
And they are in turn making people very wealthy doing the same thing. So they will trick you. AI will be the next boom in the stock market. There's no doubt in my mind about that. We need to be very cautious about this and focus in on decentralized open source methodology in that area, like Bitcoin's proof of work network, totally decentralized. Everyone has a vote. You can see everything clearly. These new networks that are coming out, we will have no insight to the code. We will have no insight to the weightings. So it could be left, like you said, left leaning, right leaning. It could be evil leaning or good leaning. We have no clue. These things are already fully automated. There are people falling in love with AI. There are new cults rising with AI gods. We know that the New World Order intention is to have an AI god coming out of the Vatican, a new god that we should all worship and, forget about the old ones that actually created this world. This is a scary time. So I'm going to give time on the AI rollout because it's not real yet. Bills have been approved. Money is being allocated. Processes are being built. I think it's important that every person does exactly the opposite of this. Shutting up and trusting the government because it's being led by Trump to do the right thing. That's what you cannot do. What you need to do is voice your opinion, get it out there. One thing I can say with absolute certainty about Trump so far is he listens to social media.
He
He
does.
listens and changes things that we don't like. And if we don't take advantage of that, we're doomed. And getting rich is the best way to blind people.
Well,
Palantir is an absolute psyop.
the only thing I take exception to Trump listening to on social media is Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah,
I've listened to John Rich, who's done podcasts talking about his interaction with President Trump with respect to Operation Warp Speed and why President Trump gets booed every time he brings up the vaccines. And it seemed that he understood it. I know President Trump was briefed by other people several years ago in December of 2022, including February of 22, when I gave a bunch of information from the DMED database to his attorney, Peter Tickton, who showed him the amazing, I presented this massive, uptick in all-cause mortality by 1,100%. It was a massive uptick in the military database after taking the shots. It was all kinds of issues. We now know them to be, cancer and cardiovascular, et cetera. So he hasn't come off that position yet Maha, aka Robert Kennedy, is taking he's trying to turn that Titanic around, and he's making some moves in that area.
he's trying.
He's trying. Jane Ruby would take issue with that and say he's not doing nearly enough. He should just stop the shots categorically. I don't know what that means, how that even looks. I know that Dr. Stephen Hatfield is also behind, trying to get the shots stopped, and he's back inside the administration again. So there are movements to get that done. Just exactly what levers you have to push to do it, I'm seemingly unfamiliar when it would seem to me if this is an executive branch agency and they report to the president, why the president couldn't just say stop, kind of like he did with Linda McMahon at the Department of Education. I mean, he really kind of set a precedent there, Eric. It seems to me that it should be fairly simple to end this. Now, I know you're going to potentially lose some donor money and whatever, but frankly,
Sure.
we need to end lobbying and, these massive corporate donors. All this stuff needs to end. You should be running because you are running for the people, not for the corporations. And so the money should come from the people. If you want to take donations, it should be, like he privately funded, and they all privately funded their own transition. That's what we need to do. When you talk to people inside agencies, I was listening to Emerald Robinson talk to you about the Maha issue. I spoke with Ed Martin several weeks ago inside the DOJ. And anybody will tell you that talks to the people high up in these agencies, they don't have a bench underneath them to help them with buying paper clips, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
The bench is rotten and they're anti the leadership at the top of these agencies now. So there is no help. But guess who? According to this document right here, the Constitution, we the people are the government. And if we come together and we have our ducks in a row and we can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt of a crime here, there, or wherever, we should be able to give that evidence or give these recommendations to our leaders, and they should be able to execute. It shouldn't be so complicated. So, I am concerned about his position on warp speed because I haven't seen him come off the high horse yet. In fact, he still says it's one of the greatest things he ever did. And to all of us, we're like, a lot of people died, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Hello,
Still
is
dying.
anybody registering with you on this? And they're
Still
still dying. Yeah.
And in Texas, we're building healthcare facilities at a speed I didn't even imagine. I mean, you know where I live, and like it's very
Yep.
fast growing, very
Yeah.
fast paced, cranes everywhere. I would say
Yeah.
3 out of 10 buildings that they're building are healthcare facilities. So there's something coming down the pike. There's no way around that.
Right. Right.
So we haven't even seen the end of the end result of warp speed yet. And it is fascinating because he just did 2 things in a press conference the other day. And again, I'm not sitting here trying to we're just calling balls and strikes. I love President Trump. I voted for him multiple times.
Same.
You know him personally. He has a tough job, and that job may be impossible. We have to kind of accept that at some point as well. In certain areas, it may be impossible to make change. And so it's such deep entrenched. Like, we need to repeal Citizens United immediately. That needs to be repealed from law instantly. That is a horrible, horrible bill.
Yeah.
But if we look at what's coming down the pike, it can't be good if you're building this many healthcare facilities. It just can't be. We don't have that aging of a population. Our elders are actually fairly healthy compared to where they were 5 years ago, minus injections, of course.
Minus the injections, exactly. And children today, the 30s and the 20s aren't having children at the rate that our generation was having children. I mean, I have 3. My husband has 3. Between us, we have 6. People today are maybe having 1, if they're even having children anymore. So our population is on the decline. That is a foregone, knowledgeable conclusion, not only in this country, but in a lot of the Western countries. I mean, everywhere in Europe, population decline. The only places that's not are in the, Islamic countries where they're out producing us 8 to 1, I think is the number. Maybe it was more.
8.1 to 1.8. Yep,
there you go. Thank you. Gosh, you have such a good brain for numbers. You're more of a numbers person than I am. But we are definitely looking at that. So why are we building so many healthcare institutions? That is of major concern. I will tell you right now, 3 of my brothers and sisters and my mother-in-law all took multiple jabs, and they're all massively suffering. 2 turbo cancers, 1 major cardiovascular, had to have stem to sternum cracked, open heart surgery, and the other one, serious neurological deficits. So, and again, these were all pre-existing conditions that came back and blew up after these jabs. So there is definitely a correlation. There's articles coming out everywhere. Doctors that are mea culpaing themselves, who are like, I'm so sorry. I knew there was no informed consent yet. I told you to do it because I trusted the government. They're in tears over it. This is happening. But why? I mean, if we have to have that many healthcare institutions for a population that is not growing anymore, is this really just a temporary Band-Aid? And they're going to turn them into condominiums after everybody's been killed off by these horrible bioweapons? I mean, what is really going on? Because this seems bizarre to me. Do you hear where I'm going with this? We're building institutions for a population subset that's, once it's gone, it's gone. Then what do we need these institutions for? What are we doing here? It's really an unusual situation.
And they could be converting a lot of this commercial real estate that no one's going to the office to work in anymore into healthcare facilities. I mean,
right.
So building new ones is, number one, it's a way of pumping up the GDP.
Sure.
By the way.
Yeah,
but we also have an immigration problem right now that people aren't talking about. Sure, the illegals have stopped crossing across the border, but we've quadrupled the amount of H-1B visas that are stealing young computer programmers, computer science degrees. Where I live is flooded with people from India. They're nice people. I'm not trying to be a jerk about this, but they're not American. Right. And there's an American kid somewhere. It doesn't matter if he's white, black, Latino, whatever. Some American kid right now is going to go 18 months without a job while someone else undercut him for $15,000 a year. Vance is on board with this. Palantir loves it. Elon Musk wants more H-1B visas, and Trump wants more H-1B visas. This is a topic no one is talking about economically anywhere.
So what are we going to do with these children that have gone into, $250,000 or more in debt to get these fancy degrees? My daughter's a nuclear rocket scientist. All right, she's blasting something off tonight, as a matter of fact, at eight
Wow.
or 8:30. Yeah, they put a ULA put
Wow.
a tweet out about it.
I've
But
known you this long. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she's brilliant, and she gets to say no, no go on her rockets if what have you. But the point I'm making is that was an expensive education. We've got student loans we're paying on that, and I'm glad she's doing what she's doing. She's one of the fortunate ones, but there's hundreds of thousands of children in the position that you're talking about. Why would this administration, which is so pro America first, be so pro H-1B visa? What do they expect to happen with these children and the families of these children that have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not over $1 million, depending on how many children they have, into education, that they're now being outranked or outflanked by H-1B visas for 15 grand? It seems unbelievable. And how does that help the GDP? How does that help America first? How does that help build prosperity into the country? What's going to happen? Are we getting some kind of debt jubilee coming down the pike that nobody knows about? And we don't even have to work if we don't want to. We can turn our nuclear rocket science into a pet project. I mean, I don't really understand the strategy that's being deployed here. I'm curious if you have a better answer for me, because I've thought about this and I just don't have one.
Well, I don't, because you touched on a topic that almost no one does, which is a culture protection. So it's scientifically proven if women are producing less than 1.89 children per female, a culture is on the decline.
Right.
Around 1.3, no one's ever come back from that. Spain is already at 1.1.
Hmm.
European nations are in this 1.3 range, many of them. But here in America, we're still around 1.9. So we're kind of teetering on, will there be an American culture? And here's a stat that I dug up the other day that for the young people, that blew my mind. In 1990, the average age of a home buyer, not a new home buyer, any home buyer, the blended average of a home buyer was 31 years old in 1990. 20 years later in 2010, 39 years old. You know what it is today? 56 years old. The
Yeah.
average home buyer in America is 56 years old. So you have no home. Jobs are being given away to foreigners legally. So like, I don't have a problem with H-1B visas as citizens of this country. They're here legally. I will accept them as Americans, but I don't have to like how they got here, because they
Right.
are getting here by undercutting an American job. That is the entire premise. So you ask, how does that help the GDP? It helps it tremendously. Our GDP, our stock market is held up by 7 companies. So the more profitable those 7 companies are, the more you can prop up the stock market. The GDP on its own, that's goods going in and out. And if we have foreigners in here, you're bringing relationships. So you're going to have more money moving around. I think the GDP is an outdated number for economic viability completely. I think we should be developing a new metrics for prosperity, because the GDP is not working. We've seen GDP growth for 15 years, but we've seen standard of living decline significantly in the last 7. So I don't
Right.
know that number reigns true. And that's an economics debate that is happening quite frequently. But when you have young people who don't have jobs, their degree isn't being used, they're in massive debt, and they still can't buy a house, you're looking at a nation in decline. And there's no other way to look at it that way. Sure, the rich are richer, like your average. We have more billionaires now than ever before, and more millionaires now than ever before. We also have more people who are on government assistance. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that I have the answer, Anne. I think AI by itself, if it's centralized and closed source, I think we're doomed. If it's open source and decentralized, I think we see prosperity we've never imagined. I do think we get to that productivity number because companies are going to be more productive.
Hmm.
There's no way around that. Like, stock returns are going to be great for a long time. But does that mean that Americans thrive? I don't know if I have the answer to that.
So one thing that came to my attention a while ago, and I've done some research on this, was the colonialization of Africa, going back in the early 1800s. When you look at the different countries, I was actually trying to find the graphic so I could have it in front of me to figure out which countries, took over what parts of Africa. But understanding that Western Europe predominantly carved up Africa back in the 1800s. Then you look at the weaponization of human migration, right? And you've had a lot of people from Africa move into Europe. You've had a lot of people from South America move into North America, and other countries coming from, the countries of terror moving through South
Yeah.
America, Operation Burning Edge exposed all this. Okay, so you've had basically a migration into the Northern Hemisphere. and by a lot of people who can't afford to be there, number one, bringing, their bad habits, their disease, their crime, their, religion that doesn't comport. There's really more of a political doctrine than a religion. And they're really anti-American. They're really here for the handout. They're here for their $2,200 a month or whatever they're getting from the government. Okay. Looking then, overlaying the COVID shot map and the chemtrail, the geoengineering map, you will see that predominantly the northern hemisphere is being sprayed out to death. They push the COVID shots like crazy, but the southern hemisphere really pretty much devoid of chemtrails and geoengineering, as well as the shots. So what I think is going to happen, Eric, if I might be so bold as to predict this, is while they push this weaponized human migration in the north, making it very undesirable to be here, and as we become more oppressed through this Palantir controlled, artificial intelligence state, if you will, this technocracy, those that can are going to have to make the tough decision to leave and to go somewhere else. Look at South America, look at South Africa, look at Central America, anywhere where you can get good sun, because we now know sun is good for you. I mean, really, people don't get melanoma on their face. Okay, that's like, great. It's all skin cancer type stuff. So let's look at the reverse migration that's going to happen for those that are awake to the problems and where they're targeting, and go, well, where are they really more free? Because at the end of the day, we are about freedom. We're about longevity. We're about health. We're about, true sustainability. We're about, not being controlled by a technocracy. And what they've managed to do is kettle all the fish into an area and left the very desirable parts of the country and world behind. I mean, it's rich and fertile in Central and South America. They have kind of destroyed this country. And so I feel like, and they're destroying Europe. My God, Britain is gone. It's unrecognizable.
Europe's
So
toast.
it's toast.
Done.
It's toast. And that's what's coming here. And people just don't want to admit it because we're comfortable. We're still, quote, comfortable, despite the fact we're complaining about the price of eggs and gasoline. We're still pretty comfortable here. But we see the writing on the wall. And now we're like, oh, dear, do we need to go and homestead somewhere else? Because I need a place for my children and my grandchildren to land. I got to think like that. I can't make it about my level of comfort. I got to think about strategy for the future of my offspring. That's where my head's at. And that's where a lot of people are coming to. Michael Yan and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah. He's great too. Yeah. That's why El Salvador is growing. Period.
Yes. Yes.
El Salvador clearly read The Sovereign Individual, which was written in 1996, predicting exactly what's happening today.
Yep.
And they are building that comfort zone for wealthy innovators to have a safe place to live that's beautiful, has great sun, it's affordable. You can get I can get my house in El Salvador, same size house, for about a third of the price.
Yep.
Taxes, I don't even know if they have taxes, income taxes. But they are building a new home, a Gulch's Gult, right? Or Gulch Gulch.
Gulch.
They're building it there for innovators, and we're trying to do the same. I see Trump trying to do the same things, but he has a much larger government to deal with, and that's giving him the benefit of the doubt. So I don't know him personally, so I don't know if he's helping the bureaucracy or destroying the bureaucracy. Everyone has an opinion on this, and I think they're all valid because it's not over yet, right? So I always tell people the Great Awakening and the Great Reset are going to look identical until one of them emerges from the ashes, because in order for either one of those plans to come into place, what's happening now has to be destroyed and be rebuilt. Right. So we don't know. I'm an optimistic person, but I put a tweet out the other day about biblical, what it means to be a biblical doomer, which is the new conspiracy theory term. You're a doomer. Dumbest name. It's like a panikin, another stupid name for people who think for themselves. But you know, Jeremiah 29:11, right? I have plans for you to prosper, but at the same time, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and your rod and your staff are what comfort me. So it's always about being prepared for the worst and hoping and praying and expecting the best. I think we should all be there. Right. Now, on to another topic from the same press conference where he re-promoted Operation Warp Speed. He also said in there that the Epstein file was a Democrat hoax and that we should stop paying attention to it. Now, I understand all the theories, right? You know, there's one people going, well, now the Democrats are asking for it. They're not. It's all an act. Nobody wants that released in Washington, D.C. I promise you, not a single person in Washington, D.C. actually wants that list released. Either they will be indicted or their friends will be exposed or their campaign will be ruined. I don't think we're going to see it. I think we'll see fractions of it. But what are your thoughts? You've been very active on this topic. And then there's other people who say, oh, it's a distraction. We need to go after treason, which I totally agree with. Like, treason's a much bigger crime, kind of, in the world. But in God's eyes, There's nothing worse than harming children. Jesus made that very clear. And now we have this debate of, do we pursue Epstein or 2020 election or simultaneous? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think we still have to pursue Epstein, and for the very reason that Pam Bondi was the one who stepped into the limelight and threw it out there like red meat. And the back and forth with Bondi, we're releasing it, we're not releasing it, bringing a bunch of social media influencers. I'm looking at a picture right now of DC Drano and Libs of TikTok, Mike Cernovich, Posobiec was there. I mean, there was a bunch of people there. And you have to ask yourself, did they get totally played to, hold a binder up, which really contained the black book that everybody's had for
Everyone
10 or
had.
15. I mean,
Yeah.
come on. It's like,
Yeah.
but I mean, to sit there and tell us, and then to have Cash and Dan Bongino look like they are, have guns to their heads that, saying, oh no, he killed himself. Especially when Dan Bongino was doing rants on his own show about the fact that it was suspicious on how Epstein died. They have kept lauding this out there. And now we've got, I think JD Vance was having a special meeting about the Epstein situation. So for Trump to be talking about it's a Democrat hoax, but yet we have information about Epstein that goes back to even when Pam Bondi was attorney general here, and it was never addressed, and he got special deals, and we know he's an operative. Why are we continuing to cover up for intelligence community operatives in our country? Why? Is it the same reason that they covered up the intelligence community operatives that are targeting Carter Page and George Papadopoulos?
Right.
It was a British intelligence, community, MI6, that really targeted them using our CIA and MI6 working collaboratively to set up this whole Trump collusion narrative of Russia hoax, blah, blah, blah. This is the plague inside our government. It's the weaponization of the IC, the intelligence community, against all of us, whether it's through the MK Ultra of the mainstream media in Hollywood, whether it's through taking over federal government agencies and censorship, whether it's the threats that who knows, is it donors that are in this list that they're so concerned about? Are they worried about I don't want to say names because I don't have names to say, but just think of any some of the biggest donors, perhaps, that might even be from Israel, that could have been at Epstein Island or is caught on video in Epstein's mansion, whatever it is that is funding maybe even the Trump team. And they're like, well, we got to get through the 2026 midterms. We can't, if we're up against such a hard wall, we are just going to have to shelve this for now and we'll deal with it later. We've got bigger fish to fry. I don't really honestly know. I just know that the American people deserve better than the responses that we're getting. And we certainly don't need to be discarded and told, that we're not needed or wanted anymore because we want the Epstein files now. It wasn't on my bucket list per se when I was voting for President Trump last year. But since they offered it, I'm like, yeah, you know what? We really should get to the bottom of this because we've never gotten to the bottom of this. So why all of a sudden they want to take it away and play the game of, takeaway? It doesn't seem fair to the American people or frankly, the people that were harmed. What about all the victims? What about the children? We talk about child trafficking in this administration being of significance and rescuing children. What about the children in the Epstein files that need to be rescued that are now, some of them are dead, apparently, right? Virginia Giuffre taking her own life. I don't know that I believe that.
No, not at all.
Not at all. So you can't just dismiss these victims. Again, if you're going to believe all women, we got to believe all women. And the Epstein files is about the women. So let's protect the women. Let's get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, let's remove evil in every possible way. And I will say this because we're calling balls and strikes.
Yeah.
We have never seen such a high rate of child sex traffickers arrested in U.S. history as we have in the last 6 months.
And bravo.
Absolutely.
All credit to the administration for doing it because God knows the last one was protecting them like crazy.
They were starting near the end, in the last year of whoever Biden was administration, they were certainly picking it up, which means that our law enforcement was doing it probably against the orders of the president. But we have seen that. So people who are out there about the Epstein stuff and children, there have been more child traffickers arrested in the first 200 days of Trump's administration than I can remember ever.
Yeah.
So we are shutting down these sex rings with children involved around the country, and hopefully they shut them all down. Modern day slavery is sex slavery. That is the new form of slavery. And there are more slaves on planet Earth now than during the Roman Empire.
Right.
So it's a big problem. So good. I'm good. Kind of on the same page with that, because I think that we also have this 2020 revelation that's coming out. Venezuelan interference, Smartmatic. Emerald's doing a great job. I'm not going to blow her cover here because she's really revealing it tomorrow. But there has been significant significant traffic in 2020. And I don't care what anyone says. I know it's 2025 and everyone wants to move on. When a treasonous act occurs and you don't handle it, you end up in the situation we're in right now. The last time we executed someone for treason was like 1852. The last time we even arrested and convicted someone of treason was 1952. So we haven't even pursued treason as a crime in almost 100 years, about 75 years. We haven't actually penalized someone to the full extent of the law in over 100 years. So what are you seeing out there politically? I know a bunch of stuff is coming out about 2020, and I don't expect much from it, but I would at least like the American people to see that 2020 was a complete sham. Where do you think we're going with that, Anne?
Well, I've talked to Patrick Byrne over the years about this, and I do believe he really has the goods. I mean, he's had the
Yeah.
goods on a lot of things for a long time, and shared a lot. I've broken a lot of stories with him, and I know he's been working closely with Emerald on this. So, knowing that he's sequestered former programmers for Smartmatic in various safe houses overseas for the last several years, interviewed them and really gotten to the bottom of it, knowing that he had a bounty of 25 million on his head for quite some time. And the response by this administration is to, basically put one on Maduro for 15 million. This is a game of high stakes chess, but it involves the people at the top of our government, including Barack Obama, Mike Pompeo, the CIA, all working in collaboration with the mafia of the Venezuelan government to steal elections around the world. And, Venezuela under Chavez developed the Smartmatic system, and Maduro is continuing to carry it out. But more importantly, our own government used it to create color revolutions and then steal elections in 72 countries. That's what the big news is. And Patrick Byrne broke that yesterday on Alex Jones' show. And it was absolutely riveting to watch this and to understand the level of complicity that our USAID money, USAID, in addition to Soros, were the people that were moving the money around to make sure this happens and that politicians are greased and paid off. So I expect that this is going to be where people come and get arrested, because we should be arresting people that are not loyal to our country first. I don't believe in this dual citizens nonsense. But when you start to find out that people that are also dual citizens in Congress are also on the take through the Smartmatic debacle and the election theft, that's when I think we're going to be able to really gut Congress, and we will have a shot. In addition to the fact Trump signed an executive order that we're not allowed to use machines. And yet you see the election, what was it? I forget their acronym. It's like their SOE, the supervisor of election, the election something board in Michigan. I can't think of their three-letter agency, but they're trying to get around this executive order from President Trump, which says, look, your machines aren't certified. There's no way you're going to get them certified by the time 26 rolls around for the midterms. You might get it done by 28. But, the Election Assistance Commission, the EAC, which is supposed to be responsible for these certifications, has basically been sweeping this stuff under the rug in concert with our CIA and other members of the government. CISA, for once. Remember Chris Krebs, the most secure election in history.
Most secure in history.
Yeah. So it's all these agencies conspiring because they're all corrupt. They're the foxes guarding the hen house, and they're all being paid off. They're all in the take. And we've got the receipts. They are getting the receipts. Patrick worked with Doge, and those kids are crackerjacks at finding this stuff. So, I mean, by the way, special shout out to Big Balls at Doge, who was beaten up in DC. I'm sure you saw that. He got really roughed up. So prayers out to him. Great kid. This is the kind of stuff where the people have got to stand firm. And I do think we're to the point now that if we don't get some red meat and arrests, Trump's going to end up having to deploy the National Guard on us because the dissidents are going to really be irate. Then we're going to know that he was never part of us if he should ever turn the turrets on us. But we, the people, we've got to be loud, and we've got to be very, very, very vocal. And frankly, I see nothing wrong with surrounding our state capitals, demanding that the people that are complicit in the Smartmatic takeover of our country, along with the CIA, that we demand that they're arrested and relieved of duty immediately, no matter where they reside. It has to happen. And it's our job to do it. We are the government. They work for us. This is how simple it is, Eric. It's not complicated, but it has to be done.
We have a small window of opportunity. I mean, I think that's the thing is right now you have the Trump administration. Some people expected him to come in and just, fire all cylinders, arrest everyone, sweep it away, whole new world in 3 weeks. That I wasn't expecting that. I expect a full 4-year grinding term like he had in his first 4-year term. But at the same time, guys, we have a small window of opportunity. The groundwork has already been laid. For conspiracy theorists like me out there, 10 years ago, my biggest fear was that we would have a government-funded, multi-billion-dollar budget for surveillance activity, a cashless society, and government-issued Ponzi money. All three of those things are now written into law. The Big Beautiful Bill. There's great things in the Big Beautiful Bill too. Okay, but
Right.
this is how it works. You get 80% good stuff, 20% that gets buried in the back that no one talks about, and the things they don't talk about are usually the worst for you. That's why they don't cover them in the press. This $150 billion for surveillance state combined with stable coins, which there's a big argument in crypto. These are good. They're good for crypto because it'll make it easier for you to get Bitcoin. You want to keep your money secure from the government, use a decentralized platform that's unconfiscatable and uncensorable. That's Bitcoin. Everything else can be compromised and will be compromised through ETF purchases of proof of stake networks who will be buying vote by proxy. But in this process, we have these three things. What no one ever wanted: surveillance state, well-funded, digital currency, cashless society. That groundwork has been laid. I don't think that we'll see any of that used in the wrong area in the next 3.5 years. But whoever comes behind Trump, when you have temptation for total control temptation rules.
You hit the nail on the head, Eric. That's exactly what I said. You can get the best of the best out of the Big Beautiful Bill, but it's a two-sided coin.
Yep.
And again, let's just sort of break down a little bit about what you're talking about, because in the bill, Trump talks about an anti-CBDC surveillance state, right? This is HR 1919. This prevents the Fed from actually issuing any sort of retail central bank digital currency. And that's good. We don't want that.
Yeah.
But it's going to harbor innovation, or excuse me, it's not harbor, hinder innovation, and put us at a disadvantage in some aspects if other countries start using advanced digital currency infrastructures before we do. And what I mean by that is they're able to circumnavigate outside our fiat system, right? And we need to get outside of our fiat system.
Yeah.
But if we go down this risk pattern, we are looking at eroding the United States digital dollar's influence. And so if we ever move into a space where the digital dollar is actually backed by something like, oh, I don't know, gold, for instance,
something that's not debt,
we will lose our pole position. And that is something that we don't want to do, because so far we've had the benefit of being the world's reserve currency, and it has benefited us. Now, I say that, but if we moved into a total free trade society where everybody is trading based on their natural resources, based on what backs up their currency, i.e. things of value, i.e. what we have buried in our own ground, which according to Jim Rickards is 150 trillion. Some say it's a lot more. So I hear numbers up to 500 trillion in resources. Whatever the number is, even if it's only 150 trillion, it by far outweighs the debt that we have on the books right now. So why wouldn't we want to be able to, use a digital dollar so that we can move more freely? It makes trade much more economical. Of course, getting off of SWIFT would be a great thing, right?
Sure.
If we could move away from that. And I think that's what BRICS is excited about. They got booted. They don't care. Russia's like, fine, no big deal. So I think there's some good and bad in it. But the fact that we're now looking at, tracking and tracing, right? The IRS is like, oh no, we've got to have our fingers in the pie when it comes to, Bitcoin, how we can, move around, whether it's ETFs. You know more about this than I do. They don't want to take their fingers out of that pie, which is why I go back to the executive action that can come from this presidency is IRS, we're done. We're having none of it. It was never enacted into positive law, so we don't need it.
Correct.
This is where I think the president could really flex. And I don't know what's holding him back, unless, of course, he is deathly afraid of getting a bullet. And I mean, look, they've already shot him once. Why wouldn't they do it again? They've had multiple attempts, but this time, they hit him. So this is where we are as a country right now. We're at a point where we have to either, or get off the pot. And 250 years ago, 56 men signed their lives away, lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. And they, and got off the pot. So they did, we're there. This is our moment. This is our moment where history books will look at us and say we were the greatest refounding fathers that this world has ever seen, because we did what needed to be done. We can't just coast through this and go, kick the can down the road. Can't do it anymore.
And I will say, and again, balls and strikes. So in the Genius Act with stable coins, it is a positive move away from full Federal Reserve control.
Right.
So we are moving towards Treasury. They are still the regulatory oversight. There are wholesale CBDCs that are still offered, and very few people know what that is, including people who work at policy institutes. They couldn't explain it to me the other day. It's basically fiat fake money that banks move bank to bank. So banks still have the ability to have a pure play Ponzi, but we don't, and that's fine. But our stable coins are backed by US T-bills. This is more debt. They are just a vacuum that will be
Right.
used to keep the debt Ponzi going so the country has enough money to operate. It's just all that's happening. It's not revolutionary. It's actually more reactionary than anything else.
And to me, that is a travesty when we're going to
Yeah.
keep, printing this debt to back up something. I mean, how many countries right now are just trying to casually offload their treasuries, right?
Oh, every
You know,
one of them.
every single country is like, oh, the United States debt, no bueno, and they're trying to offload this stuff, and so it's putting us in a very difficult position. Uh, and it's only a matter of time before that catches up. And this is what Trump's race against time is: refinancing the debt, which is why he's so irate with Powell. But again, it's a catch 22. You know what happens when you lower interest rates,
Oh, yeah.
inflation goes up. So he's really in an unenviable position, unless, of course, there's something else that we just don't see what's behind door number 3. And I don't know. What do you think that is? If there is something.
Door number 3, God knows. There's a million options for that could be available. But I think door number 3, first of all, I don't think that the world, after 80 years of fiat currency, I don't think the world will trust gold-backed money. I wouldn't. I'm still going to stay with digital scarcity that's totally auditable, which is why Bitcoin's important.
Mhm.
I do see us going to some form of fractional reserve because we're completely off fractional reserve.
Mhm.
There's nothing backing the dollar anymore. Absolutely nothing. Which makes it no different than any other country in the world. Zimbabwe launched a gold-backed dollar. It's down 65% backed by gold, redeemable for gold. I think we're going to see a big transition with AI implementation, Palantir, all these things that we're seeing. We're going to a full digital world. Nothing's going to stop that. Nothing stops what's coming. That was coming. That's one of those things that's on its way. So I think we're going to be in a world, honestly, in the next couple of years where there'll be those who have Bitcoin and those who have stable coins. And I think
Mm.
that's kind of the separation of the masses. So, if you don't even like Bitcoin, put $100 in, just secure some money, take a flyer, right? If you don't want to do the research, take a flyer. Own physical gold. I think it's extremely valuable. Gold's never going to have zero value. I hate hearing people
Right.
say that.
Right.
Metals are always going to have value. The problem is they're the most papered market in the world. It's a gigantic scam. But if you eliminate that scam, you have value again. But Anne, as you well know, and John knows well more than anyone, that scam is worth trillions to a small group of people who are very powerful. So
Right.
we'll see
I
what
don't want
happens.
that scam to end.
No, I mean, I don't have a political party. I really haven't ever. Many people accuse me of being libertarian, but no libertarian can tell me what a libertarian is, so I won't be a libertarian. I believe in separation of money and state, period. Like, I
Mhm.
think that money and state should not be intertwined, yet we have an entire world that's cheering for their government to recreate a new Ponzi scheme to enslave them. So door number 3, if I'm being optimistic, would be the sovereign individual, where you have a separation of money and state. You have pockets of freedom and innovation, but you're also going to have pockets of tyranny. Europe is going to be in complete tyranny by the end of this year. They're launching a CBDC, a pure play CBDC. And here's the difference between a CBDC and a stable coin for the people listening. The CBDC is backed by nothing. It's programmable money. For people like Anne and myself, by doing this video, they would restrict us being able to buy goods 5 miles from our home or just shut
Right.
down our account with a stroke of a button. A CBDC is that. A stable coin is that, but it's backed by T-bills. There's really no difference. Totally programmable, except the government doesn't control it. Private corporations do. And if you've been paying attention for 50 years, you understand that private corporations control the government. So it is
Right.
still the government.
Right.
So it's
They're
technocracy.
instrumentalities.
Yeah, it's Rothschild versus Musk, right? Like
Correct.
that's kind of where we're in this debate of which genre we go into next. I don't know what door number 3 is, and I don't really speculate on it. I do think we'll have a divide of those who have decentralized money and centralized money. And I think that I don't think the IRS will exist in 4 years. That's the optimism in me. And again, that would unleash human innovation around the world. You would have the best of the best moving here to never pay taxes and innovate with
Right.
some government subsidy. Because if you have enough tariff coming in and you reduce government, you have a really good country. But again, we have this window, and that's why people like you, people like me are not just going trust the plan and sit here and Trump has it all figured out and doing mental gymnastics for obvious things that should be questioned. I think I think Trump does things at times to see where our temperature is, right? To like, let's see where your temperature's at. One thing that boggled my mind was this. I don't remember the HR, the executive order, but the executive order saying that 1.9 billion in FEMA aid won't be administered to states who are protesting Israeli corporations. The Department of Homeland Security came out and said that's not what the executive order says. They changed the EO, and everyone caught them in like 5 minutes because the link to the original EO was right next to it. All you had to do was
Yeah.
click a link.
You're like, busted.
Yeah, like instantly, it was right there.
I
So,
know.
but again, if we didn't raise our voices about it, no one would have known, and
That's right.
that would be the situation right now, regardless of how shady it looks. A change was made, right?
I had a thought about that because I thought it was so extraordinary that that was such a blatant, obvious lie. I'm thinking to myself, did they do that to send Israel a message to say, the American people are having none of this? Like, we tried. Oops. Sorry, BB. Didn't work out. Americans said no.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder if that wasn't the case to sort of take the temperature of the country because it was. I mean, I like grandmothers knew that this was a complete and utter lie. And I mean, how many grandmothers are on X every minute, staying up to date? So
There's
it's
some
pretty
awesome
wild.
ones that follow me. They're grandmas and they are on the ball, man. Like
Well, I'm
they
one,
get it.
so
Yeah, but you're a young grandma. There
whatever. Still a grandma. I
we
love
have
being a grandma.
this window of opportunity. If we just sit back and do nothing these next 3 years, we absolutely have no room to complain if tyranny
Exactly.
is imposed with the groundwork that's laid, right? So it's laid. It's there. Follow the Constitution. Your
Yep.
speech in Texas, by the way, I still have some friends I met at that event that night that are still like emailing me and stuff like, what did she mean by this corporation act? And I'm like, I hope you have
Well,
that recorded and you put it online because it was fantastic.
oh, I don't know if anybody recorded that or not that night. I have no idea. I didn't ever really ask, so I have
I
to
hope so. It was so good. It was
thank
so
you.
good. You mentioned El Salvador, which kind of the stuff we're talking about now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the future of this country, people will hear this and you're a doomer, panicking. What, guys? We've been called
Stop.
names our whole life. Like it makes no impact on me. I won't call you names back like sissy or coward, which is what you are, by not questioning your government. But at the same time, look at the people I have on my show. Owen Schroyer was on here the other day. We talked about panicins and how stupid. Like you're not impacting us in any way.
Right.
We're just strong people trying to find a brighter future. We
That's right.
laid out some economic numbers for our youth. These are not good things. That needs to be reversed. Reproductive rates. These are things that need to be increased. We need more Americans. We need less fake Americans coming in from other countries. And I love foreigners who come here legally and assimilate. But unfortunately, we're bombarded with cultures that do not and have no interest in assimilation. And
I
if you're not
know.
noticing that, of course, and tomorrow or on the comments, someone is going to call me a bigot for saying this. It's just the truth. If I'm a bigot, I'm a bigot. So be it. But I'm going to share the truth because I believe in Ephesians 5:11. Do not partake in the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. And
Mhm.
that is something Christians have massively forgotten.
I
But
agree.
Israel right now is such a huge topic that I think Gen Z is going to have a big impact on. I'm very bullish on Gen Z, by the way.
Me
About five
too.
years ago, I wasn't. Gen Z is getting bold. They are getting angry as they should.
Yep.
They are getting wise. My kid is Gen Z.
Yep.
And when I drive his friends, when they go somewhere with his friends, they're always like, can your dad drive? And so after like 4 or 5 times, and I get in the car and they bombard me with questions about the Bible and about Israel and geopolitics. And these are 16-year-old, 15-year-old boys.
Yep.
And I finally asked my son, I go, can someone else drive? Why do you guys always ask me? And they just want time with someone who follows, what's happening in the world to learn from.
Yep.
I am very bullish on Gen Z. I think they're going to make such a big impact
You
in this
need to
world.
start a bus service and just pile these kids on and just volunteer to drive to every sporting event and red pill them
YouTube will
over.
have cars in front and back of me saying, don't go on this bus. I promise you within a week.
Probably. That's hilarious. No, it's true. I think Gen Z is absolutely got everything on the ball. The pendulum always swings back, right?
Yeah.
And this time it might look like a guillotine, though, as it comes across and lops a few heads off coming back into center because, frankly, there's some heads that need to roll anyway. They're just useless. They're just, these people are inconsolable. I don't want to say irredeemable. I think they're irredeemable, but they're inconsolable and they just need to go home. It's pretty sad what's happened to our country because we become so overwhelmed with information war and people don't know the truth from the truth and the wrong from the wrong. I mean, it's everywhere. You have to literally figure out using discernment what God gave you and start to go, now let's just try to take the temperature down and look at this rationally. Rationally, would God want this? What would our founding fathers want? And if it doesn't line up in either of those two piles, then we need to get rid of it, right? And I think that's what Gen Z is. They can't take this hysteria. And to be honest, I don't even know my cell phone isn't even on my desk, thank God. But to be honest, Gen Z grew up with the cell phone, right? That's all they knew. And I think they are now discovering people, and that the truth is coming through this device, and they're now wanting to talk to real people about it as opposed to just a device. And so I think we're going to start to see the bifurcation of the people that are just addicted to the screen to the kids that actually know how to use the screen as a tool
Yeah.
and put it in the box where it belongs and come back to the people. I think we're going to see the rebirth of the family, and I think Gen Z is going to be the ones that save us, because Gen X and my generation, the tail end of it, and the millennials, forget it.
Yeah.
Forget it. The millennials is a lost generation. I feel terrible for them.
Gen Z is focused in on health through natural products. They're big into that.
Mhm.
My kid look anytime I bring something from the store, he's like, "Does it have red 40?" I'm not eating it
I
if it has red
know.
40. I love that. More importantly, I keep this little book here, and it's a baptism book. So at my church, I track baptisms. We had 82 baptisms this past week. 60% were over the age of 40. All the rest were Gen Z, very few little kids. So these were teenagers plunging to the water, proclaiming faith. I think that we are seeing so many. They ask me so many questions about the Bible, and
Oof.
when I'm not doing this stuff that gets me called names, I'm generally trying to minister or run a prayer group, and there's nothing more important to me than I used to say on my shows. I used to say, "Stay calm, stay level, see what happens next." That was always my tagline. I'm changing it now to focus on your health, your faith, your family, your health, and your wealth. Those are the four
Exactly.
things you need to focus on in life. But seeing these young kids turn to something, and they're not all going to Christianity, but they're looking for something deeper in life.
Mhm.
Going from screens to real life is a shock, just like we went from real life to screens.
Right.
We all got sucked in. I got sucked in for about 2 years. I probably had 10 hours a day of screen time.
Yep.
And you learn like, whoa, I need balance and I need to get with real people. But Gen Z guys, keep it up. If you're watching, I know a lot of you watch the show, which is ironic because I'm an old man. But I speak your language because I don't have fear in my heart. I'm going to speak exactly what I believe to be the truth. I'm going to back it with facts and evidence, just like Anne does on her shows every day and every time she's a guest somewhere. And if we all understand the truth, then we won't believe lies anymore. And that by itself changes society for the better. And you're going to do that, as Anne said, with God's discernment. Discernment truly comes through God.
I
Uh,
agree.
and that's my belief. And there's plenty of people who will never listen, and that's fine. I love you too. I can't stand the modern Christianity. I don't even believe in the church. I don't believe in religion. I believe in relation. I believe
Right.
your relationship with God is what's important. You don't need to go to a church. You don't need to follow. You don't need to wear blue jeans in the swimming pool. That's stupid. Nobody should ever done that to anybody. But we're coming to this point in life where people are seeking something with depth. I put a post out today. I go, it's amazing how many people can tell you word for word, blow for blow, an argument between influencers and celebrities and don't even know their next door neighbor's name. They're not even
Right.
paying attention to their own financial problems. They're paying attention to a Twitter beef.
Yeah.
This part of society needs to be thrown in the garbage at some
I
point. I think
agree.
Gen Z is the one that does it.
I pray you're right, from your lips to God's ears and to their discernment. Truly.
Well, Anne, this has been great. So let's give a quick summary. 2-minute drill, the goods and the bads, first 200 days of Donald Trump.
The good is, obviously he's rolled back a lot of the Biden executive orders. That's a positive. The border being closed is a positive. It's down to a dribble, which is great. They still are expanding the camps in the Darien Gap. That's a bad, which means they're still getting funding from the United Nations, which is bad. We're still the biggest funder of the UN. That's horrific. We need to end all that. We need to defund the United Nations and get out of NATO. I have zero. We need to get out of IRS and the Fed. Those are things that are bad. We have all that bad, and that's still a big weight on the people. The people are waking up. That's a positive. They're paying attention to everything. Massive positive. To wit, the scandal you talked about where DHS, got caught in a lie in an executive order. I'm glad. I'm glad. We need to hold everybody accountable. AI intelligence is incredibly powerful. But when it comes in the instances of being deployed in government through agencies and instrumentalities of government, no, not good at all. If you want AI in the private sector, that's fine. And you want to opt into that, that's up to you. But we shouldn't have it forced down our throats. The government is way too big. And the fact that, Doge came in and did a good job of starting to expose this stuff only to have a big, beautiful bill come in at $5 trillion is a problem. Doge didn't do anything to come close to negating $5 trillion in terms of what they uncovered. We have tariffs coming in. Good. But we need to figure out how to really, shrink the size of the bureaucracy so that the tariffs will actually cover a minimal bureaucracy. We don't need all that we have. We still have a problem with Operation Warp Speed. We still have a problem with RNA, despite the fact that, Secretary Kennedy has done a lot to try and expose it. We have so much rot in all of these agencies, which is why I think we need to wholesale fire pretty much everybody in these agencies and just keep a few people to kind of get some of this stuff done, because we don't need all these people. They're not doing anything anyway except obstructing the progress of what we the people can actually do if we're left alone. So I give the Trump administration, high marks overall, but low marks in some of the most critical areas, which is really, pointed at the threat to our sovereignty, which comes to financial health with the IRS, the Federal Reserve, which is meddling in the free markets, and of course, the artificial intelligence overreach into our everyday lives. Those three things are still very much ugly as far as I'm concerned, and they need to be addressed.
I think that's a great synopsis. I agree with all of that. And I will throw another positive in there. I'll reiterate this again. We are arresting sex traffickers at the highest
Amen.
rate in history. That is a massive thing.
Yep.
And I think we're actually seeing, for people out there dealing with this stuff, we also need to get tougher, right? Like if you question Israel, you're an anti-Semite. If you question something about race in this world, you're a racist. If these names are meaningless. They mean nothing. We have a quest for the truth. And I think that's what all people out there who you may get angry listening to a broadcast of them questioning your favorite politician. Just remember, one of my favorite memes is like, trusting a politician is like thinking the stripper actually likes you.
Right.
That is one of those things you have to just negate. There is no left, there is no right. That's an illusion. They're all run by pretty much banks, run the world, Federal Reserve, central banks of Europe, and all these places. They're actually pulling the strings. And the faster we get rid of them, the faster we get back to sovereignty. And I actually think, actions won't prove it yet, but I think in the next year or so, we will see some very strong actions by this administration if we keep putting pressure on them to get rid of the IRS and get rid of the Federal Reserve. If we just sit back and say everything's great, let's trust it, we're doomed. Follow the Constitution. That's why I like being in Texas. I can send my kids to private school or to public school, and they learn both constitutions, Texas and the United States.
You have a great candidate for governor, Doc Pete Chambers, running for governor of Texas. I highly encourage the Texans to elect Doc Pete Chambers to the governorship of Texas. Why? Because he's going to eliminate property tax. He's working on that. And he's promised to arrest Fauci. He was one of the DMED whistleblowers, the Department of Defense whistleblowers. He was also offering informed consent to his National Guard troops down on the border. And unfortunately, he was, let go. He was told time to go. You can't be offering informed consent. Former Green Beret flight surgeon, phenomenal guy, Doc Pete Chambers. I just want to leave your audience with that, if I might.
I have had a text interaction with him. I forgot to call him, but guy's not afraid to tell the truth. I put out some really hard things. Here's what Texans really want. He was straightforward with it. So I'm really excited. Hopefully I'll have him on here.
Get him on. He's a fantastic interview, and he's a dear, dear friend. You'll love him.
Absolutely. We'll get him on here. We'll ask him some tough questions, see how he reacts, because that's what we forgot to do with politicians. We just ask them cupcake questions. They give us cupcake answers. Everyone's happy, and we end up in tyranny.
Exactly.
Well, and thank you so much for coming on here. I know how busy you are with all the stuff you're doing. Let everybody know what you're working on, how they can support you, where they can find you, how they can follow you. Just give them the whole rundown.
Sure. So I'm co-founder of American Made Action and American Made Foundation, both .org. We are 501c3 and C4 focused on education about things like we're talking about, predominantly all our constitutional rights that have been trampled on by this, bureaucratic monolithic tyranny called the federal government. We are doing documentaries to help educate. We have another one that's coming out right now. It'll be in Boston in September 7th at the Legacy Theater. It's called Taken, State-Sanctioned Kidnapping. We're focusing on this one agency called Child Protective Services in all of its 50 state tentacles, and we intend to take it down because it is truly child trafficking at the expense of the family unit, which
100%.
Without families, America can't be great. So the amount of negligence and due process violations that happen on a daily basis through these organizations and the parasitic organizations that really just survive to make sure they profit off your pain is disgusting. It's an $80 billion a year industry. We've done other documentaries about North Carolina called, Ground Zero North Carolina with respect to what happened in Hurricane Helene. And we enlightened everybody on FEMA and the National Defense Authorization Act and the big energy play and how the federal government is stealing your land. It's all about land grabs. It's still going on. So we do that. I have a website where you can find all of my social media links to X and Truth and Getter, as well as my Substack, which is pretty robust these days, at AnneVanderSteel.com. Thank you so much. I appreciate being on.
You bet. And God bless you, Anne. God bless John. And tell him I'm going to call him this week too.
Okay.
God bless you all. God bless this country. Things are looking up, guys. We've got a long fight in front of us. You could look at it from every perspective. And I think the best perspective is to find the truth and figure out what you need to do next. So I'm going to reiterate this. Focus on your faith, family, health, and wealth, and you'll never go wrong. God bless you all. And we look forward to seeing you next time here on The Rice Report. Have a good one, everyone.